Hello and welcome everyone to our session today. We're very excited to be with you, and we're going to talk about kickstarting your MBA application process. And I'm Michelle Beldin, I'm with Emma Bond, and we're with Fortuna Admissions.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we're super pleased to be here today with you. We're really looking forward at this point in the year when everybody's starting to get excited about getting their MBA applications started. We're going to run through what you can do to hopefully get things going on the right timeline and make sure that you avoid all those last minute crunches when it comes around to September.
That's right, Emma. So we want you guys to plan like a pro. So Emma and I are going to take you through the steps that we think will really help you find success, throughout the application process. So if we go to, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Michelle Beldin. I'm a former Associate Director of Admissions at Wharton.
Yeah, I'm Emma Bond. I was previously, in a former life it feels now, a Senior Manager of Admissions at London Business School.
Absolutely. So just as our quick agenda that we'll be going through, and like we said, we really want to help you understand the steps in the process to help you find success. So if we go to our first slide, I think just to get down to it, why planning ahead matters. And first of all, you're all here with us today, which is a great sign. If you're thinking of applying this upcoming season or next year, I think the steps that we're going to walk you through are really going to help you feel like you are, really organized, and you can really understand what is involved in each step of the way. So if we jump into the next slide and we see that, why it matters, right? And I think Emma and I both have seen over the years, our clients that truly find success are the ones that are ahead of the game. So first, it's a very competitive process, right? So you all are looking at these amazing schools, and the elite schools have, a very, very low acceptance rate. So we think in order to find success, you really just need that careful strategy and execution. It is a significant commitment. So we really feel like that planning and execution will help you lead to success. So, it takes months to develop a strong application. There's many things that are involved that we're going to walk you through. And so really preparing is key. And like I said, I think as you'll see, the clients that we work with, and we really get to work with them, 6 months out, we really get to help them through all those steps and feel organized, and feel like they're going to, applying to an MBA doesn't have to be overwhelming. So if we look at our next slide, it's just a quick timeline that I just wanted to show you all. That's just going to kind of really show you how to be organized, how to, meet those key milestones at every step of the way, and again, position you for success. So let's jump in to really, it might feel like a really ahead of the game, but like I said, if you are here 12 to 18 months ahead of time, there's a lot to start to do. And I think what is really crucial is to understand, if we start with, what are we going to do? We're going to research, look at your own profile. So I like to begin with, what are your career aspirations? So really already starting to sit back and think about, what do I want to do professionally after business school in the future? And then how do I understand how an MBA aligns with that? So I think if we can still start with that self-reflection, it's really going to pay off in the coming months. So your career goals, how an MBA fits in with that, and then specifically looking at programs. So when you can identify the programs that are a good fit for you, that is also going to help as we move through the timeline. It's really going to lay the groundwork to put together a compelling application. So the next step is doing your school research. And that's everything from the curriculum, what is the culture of the school, what are the opportunities within career, look at the career management profile. And again, is that something that you are looking to get out of a school? And the way you can continue to research is the outreach and really engagement with each of the schools. And there's many ways to do that. So attending fairs, if you are able to visit the campuses, we really believe that brings, a lot to life. Now, it's not required, but I think it really helps you envision yourself there. And what is that? What is, again, the atmosphere and the culture, the ethos on campus, and speaking to current students, as well as that outreach and networking with alumni, as well as current students. They've been in your shoes. They understand what process you are going through. So they're really open to answering questions that you have. So I think that, research is key to this early step in the timeline. And so next we would say, look at your own profile, right? Identifying, where are maybe the gaps within your leadership, in your extracurriculars, strengthening, your academic component if you wanted to take, an extra class on the side. But in general, just looking at overall, what does my profile look like? If I can identify any gaps, and how would I work on them again in the next year leading up to my application for business school? And then lastly, which is I think people don't maybe necessarily think about right away, is recommendation prep. And when we say that, we really mean trying to identify and begin to cultivate those relationships with people you believe that you would like to ask to write your letters of recommendation. I think that's something that you can already begin to think about definitely a year in advance. Who are your direct managers? And again, this is when we really try to help our clients understand it's not the title of the recommender, it is really the relationship and the direct contact day in and day out into who sees how you step up, how you handle a difficult situation, and can really speak to that in your applications. So I think just looking overall this kind of 12 to 18 months out, this first step, and that you can really reflect and understand where you're at and where you're trying to get to, I think is really going to lay the groundwork. So let's go to our next step, and Emma's going to speak about what you do in the 9 to 12 month period.
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. And I actually had a conversation like that with a current client a couple of days ago. Must have been, what are we on? Must have been Friday last week, just about choosing the recommender. And they were quite keen to go with somebody who was very senior. And I said, yeah, actually, it's great that you're thinking about it now, because it can take time to get them in line. But let's go with somebody who sees you on an everyday basis. So it's really important, when you have those conversations, that you choose the right person. So about 9 to 12 months before, hopefully you will be thinking about taking a standardized test, which is required for most of the MBA programs, still globally the top schools. So the thing that strikes fear into a lot of people's heart is, how am I going to perform in this test? Am I going to be able to reach the benchmark that my schools of choice are looking for? So one of the first things that you can do to help yourself is to take a diagnostic test and choose which test is right for you. So GMAT's been around for many, many years. GRE has become more and more prevalent, and the tests are not exactly the same. They reach different skills. So it's a really good idea before you take the test to see diagnostically which is better suited to you. Generally speaking, though it's not a sort of hard written rule, if you tend to score better on the verbal components, then the GRE might be best for you. If you are strong on quant, then GMAT is usually the right one. But it's best to take a test, see what fits you, and then get down to the prep. Prep can be tough. There are a number of different ways which you can approach it. It depends really what suits you. Are you somebody that likes studying independently? If you are comfortable setting yourself a timetable, if you know you're going to stick to it, if you can fit it around your working day and without kind of getting burnt out, then some people find that's the best for them. There are other options available, lots of really, really good prep courses out there online, or you might want to work with an independent individual tutor and somebody that can really kind of hold you to account. But we sort of can't, I guess, say enough about how much the prep counts. It is a really, really useful thing in making sure that you achieve the score that you are capable of, and that will help support your application. In terms of target scores, it depends, and Michelle will back me up here. It depends. If you are looking at a Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, then the score that you need to help support your application to those schools may potentially be different to a school that is not quite so tough to get into. It's a good idea to have a clear goal in mind. The way that you can assess this is to have a look at your schools of choice. Look at the schools you're interested in. Most of them publish their average test scores. They also publish a range. So are you within kind of striking distance of the score that you're going to need to be successful in your application? We always say in the admissions world, it is only one component, and it's really important to remember that they are difficult, these tests, and they can be stressful. It is only one factor, but it can be super useful in terms of showing your academic capabilities, your ability to cope with the coursework. And one of the things that it can do very successfully for you is if you've perhaps struggled a bit during your college career, during your undergraduate, sometimes having a strong GMAT score can offset any concerns that the admissions committee might have around that, right? So they don't want you to come into the program and to struggle when you hit accounting, when you hit statistics, because that's not in anybody's best interest. So, taking the time to do that and making sure that you have a strong score that is in line with the schools that you are wanting to apply to is really important. Next on the slide, we've got book a test date. So 2 reasons for this. One is it helps hold you accountable. So if you know you've got a test date coming up, for example, if you are looking at applying in round 1 in September this year, then you might be looking at getting your first test, if you haven't already done it, perhaps next month, because we're coming up to April already. What that will do is give you buffer time. So that will enable you to take the test again and even again if you need to. So we probably work with very few candidates who secure the test that they want first time around. So some of them do need to go back and retake the test. And there's nothing wrong with that. Schools are used to it. It's very unusual for somebody to hit this target score that they want first time up. But yeah, booking a test on time sort of make sure that you have it in your mind what your dates are, and it enables you to book more tests in as you get towards the deadlines. So yeah, don't be put off by the tests. Take your time, do your prep, work out what study schedule is best for you, and that will sort of position you in the best way to succeed in that. So if we go on to the next slide, Michelle, I'm going to hand over to you 3 to 6 months before. So actually where we are about now. Is that right? Yeah, roughly for round 1.
Yeah, I feel like we're just about there. And I think if you've kind of, done that work that we just talked about, you've really positioned yourself you have your strong profile ready to go. So now it's kind of time that Emma and I come in and we are working with our clients to really, craft a compelling application. So what does that mean? So first, I would say I want my clients to start to finalize, if they haven't already, their school selection, right? There is what schools am I planning to apply to round 1? Is there a round 2 strategy if I have a couple additional schools? But really having a focus now, these are the schools on my list. Next, you want to go and see what their application requirements are, right? So each of those schools, what are they requiring? Every school is a little bit different. So you want to understand their process. You want to understand their deadlines. You want to know if, I need 2 letters of recommendation. I want to understand, how many essays, do they have a video component? When is that due? So understanding all those requirements for each of the schools you're looking at. And then really the main thing, as Emma and I jump in with our clients, is really, okay, let's really define what are your key messages, right? What is your career vision? So helping identify those, and what are your most compelling stories? Again, depending on what each of the schools is asking you, and how do we convey that? So really honing into that now and really identifying what those messages are that you want to highlight throughout your application. And what that really involves is now diving into the essays, right? So after you really, understand this is my career vision, how I want that key attributes I want to get across, let's look and see what the essays are for each of the schools, right? And that's really you're going to talk, if you have a coach with one of us, we're going to talk with you through a brainstorm session, through an outline, and then multiple iterations. And that's just really making sure you have the right stories, the right content for each of the essays. And again, going back to really understanding all the application requirements and what opportunities the school is giving you throughout the application to tell them about yourself. So we do like to point out that many of the schools have shorter questions or short answers within the data forms that also will be able to get across who you are, your background, that really should complement your essays as well. So there are the different components that we think if you really are planning and you really are strategic in the messaging throughout those different areas in the application, that can get across successfully your story. And then lastly, we go back to the letters of recommendation. And really, once you have identified the recommenders, you've spoken with them, they're on board, is really helping them, give them guidance and guiding them through the process with, this is how many schools I'm applying to, here are the questions that are going to be asked of you, here's the deadline, and being really, thoughtful that, round one deadlines, are going to overlap with summer and holidays. So really making sure that you're giving your recommenders enough time with the materials that they can also write and find success with their letters of recommendation. And then lastly, something that's not on here, just something we also want to make sure our clients are aware of, you're going to need transcripts, and requesting those from your undergraduate institutions will also be important. So again, getting ahead of these things, if you're about 3 to 6 months out and looking at all the different components, I think the process will feel very smooth to you, and understanding what areas should you be working on and when. And I think Emma and I both, really help guide our clients through those different milestones. And this one is a great place to really get started as you are then moving into the real work. I think if I pass it on to Emma for the next, as we look, going into more, 2 to 3 months out, and what you need to be focusing on as you are preparing your applications.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we'll share with everyone at the end is where you can sign up for a free consultation with Fortuna. So it's because of the time we're at now, sort of March coming into April, we do have a lot of people approaching us to just discuss things on a free call, which is basically, I'm considering these schools. Do you think I'd be a good fit? So we're very happy to go through those kind of things with you, in advance of any decision that you make in terms of those school choices and the other things that you need for your application. So we'll share that link with you at the end. So 2 to 3 months before, this is where things are getting towards crunch point, and we talk about refining your application. So at this point in the process, as Michelle said, you've generally worked with your coach through things like your essays, your positioning. You've got your sort of strategy in mind in terms of how you want to present yourself to the admissions committee. So I always think with clients at this point, it's a really good idea to say to people to take a step away for a couple of days. If you have your application pretty much in hand and you've been looking at it sort of day in, day out, you've been in the weeds in it, it's just like anything. Sometimes taking a step back for a few days, for a week, putting it away and not looking at it means that when you come back to it, you've got fresh eyes and you may see something that you hadn't previously seen. Sometimes you can reach out and ask for a bit of feedback from a close friend. I don't usually recommend asking all and sundry to give their input. It can be more a hindrance than a help, but somebody that you really trust, who really knows you and can take a look at your essays, a look at your application and say, yep, actually, I can see your authentic self shining through this application. So that can be a really good thing to do around about this time. One of the other things that's really good to get polished up around now is your resume. So making sure that all your kind of career highlights are really clearly defined within your resume, that you are showcasing the skills that you bring to the table for the MBA program. And that's something that it's useful to remember as you're going through the whole process. It's not just about kind of what you have done to date. It's not a what, it's also about the skills that you bring. So if you have secured a big project win for your business, what are the skills that you use to achieve that? So all of those things need to shine through the different aspects of your application. Michelle talked a little bit about the application form, the short answer questions. Some schools, they are mini essays. So you think that you've kind of got away with just 1 or 2 main essays and you open up the application form. And if you leave it too late, you can be literally 2 days before the application is due and suddenly find you have a whole bunch of other information. If you look at big schools like Harvard, Stanford, they have their career goals. Sometimes they seem quite short, but actually if you don't get those right, they can really torpedo your application. So giving those aspects of the form, the data form, due diligence is really, really important. It's something that we work with for our clients. We go through everything. It's not just about essays. It's not just about sort of sorting out recommenders. We go through the application form with you. We help you with any short answers, just making sure that they really showcase you in the best light possible. The next point we have on our slide is video questions. So most schools use the Carer Talent platform these days. When I was back at LBS, these were not in existence, and they are really a fantastic way for admissions committees to see you come to life. So for schools to kind of take you off the page and to say, okay, I can see this person really becoming a part of our school community. I can see them as somebody who will put up their hand in a classroom, who will engage, who will be involved, and who will contribute. The video essays or video interviews, as most schools call them, differ from school to school. So through the Carer platform, ADCOMs can assign a particular number of questions. Some schools now have written components. So they are things that you need to take time to practice and to get right. They can be quite daunting for some of our clients. So we run usually prep sessions for them in advance. With my clients, I turn off my video, I turn off the camera on Zoom, and then I throw questions at them in the chat. And then they have the time allotted to come back and share an answer with me. So doing that, taking time, is really, really important to show this kind of different component of yourself, to show how you will be in real life as opposed to just through your essays. But if you are not ahead of the game and if you are coming up to deadlines, that can feel quite rushed. So it's something that we generally recommend that you get started on a little bit beforehand. And then recommend a follow-up. So you don't want to be in a position where you have all your ducks in a row, everything's sorted out with your coach, you're ready to submit, your essays are polished, you've got everything else done, and then your recommender goes on holiday. So hopefully, if you have addressed this earlier on in the process, that's not going to be an issue. But it's really, really important that you just continue to check in through the process to make sure that your recommender is ready to submit ahead of the deadline, because the worst place to be is you have everything ready and they're not. So yeah, that's something we recommend as well, going through, that we just check in, make sure that everything's ready to go and that there's not going to be something missing at the last minute. And actually, going back to what Michelle said, that's why it's also a good idea to get your transcripts and everything sorted out early, because I don't know about you, Michelle, some schools I know of are a bit slow in terms of churning those things out when they are needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, I think people, again, just like the video questions, if you kind of put it off and you forget about it and you feel rushed, and that's our main, we're trying to help you through the, give you all these, milestones to hit and when to do them, because we don't want you to feel off guard and be like, oh, I forgot to get my transcript. And going back here, we're 1 month out. And you're trying to do the final review. Hopefully, again, you're not feeling rushed. You've really given yourself the time to put together a thoughtful application. And as we kind of said, I don't know if you saw at the bottom of the last slide, I think our real goal is, is it telling a true, authentic story of who you are? And so therefore, at this moment, 1 month out, I want my clients to go in and let's do a holistic review ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really ensuring, are they getting to know me both professionally and personally? My key attributes, but also who I am. And I think every school in a different way is going to ask you those questions and try to find that out. Because again, as Emma said, they want to understand both will you be, gaining from an MBA, but also what are you bringing and are you going to be contributing to their community, to their school? So as you go into this 1 month out, you go back, review your essays. You want to make sure they're polished. You want to really proofread. I think when we were in the admissions office, one thing I wanted to make sure is there are no small little mistakes because it's not rushed, right? So if you go now, you do that final proofread, and you can really make sure, nope, I've dotted all my I's, all my periods, my word limit is there, and everything really feels good, and I feel confident. And I think going back to Emma, that is giving yourself some opportunity. If it's right now, if it was before, is taking that step away. I call it kind of a final-ish version of everything. You step away, and then you can really go back with fresh eyes. And then, as we want to say, this last box, which is submit early, is you want to avoid any last minute rushes. So I try to give my clients if nothing else, 48 hours before the deadline, you'll be pushing submit, if not even earlier, maybe the week of, because then you also don't have to worry about any of the glitches that happen on the end of the school that we've seen and just the last minute stress. We are trying to stay away from that as much as possible. And then so finally, you also want to make sure, again, your test scores, confirming submission with GMAT or the GRE. Again, double checking with your recommenders, doing just little touch points with them. You can tell on your end if they've submitted, and if they haven't, you can just send them some notes leading up to that deadline. And I think it's really important at this point to really, I want to say, feel great about your application. And I think if you've done all these steps, this 1 month out, a final review before you push submit is going to make you feel so much better that you're like, that's all I could do. They're going to get to know me. I've, really been thoughtful about every part of the application and all the components. And when you push submit, you're ready to go. And I think that leads into, I think our final slide for Emma to go through is any kind of pitfalls to avoid. So that we want to make sure.
We want to avoid the pitfalls. So the best way to do that is to start early. And some of you who are listening today will be already into the process. Hopefully you've taken your test. You're starting to think about who your recommenders might be, and you're kind of coming up to that 5 to 6 month out period where you're going, okay, I think I've got things, sort of sorted. I'm thinking about my schools. I kind of know what my schools are going to be. So if you start with enough time in hand, you are likely to avoid being rushed, which will lead to weaker results. You don't want to be one of those people who doesn't have time to proofread, who comes up against a technical hitch when you're submitting, 5 minutes to the deadline. Or, heaven forbid, one of those people who both Michelle and I have seen who have not proofread and submitted an essay and it actually has the wrong school name on it. So those are true stories that we have. All of those. We have, stories of those from our time working in admissions. So if you give yourself time, you will end up with a more thoughtful, more careful, and more polished application. Neglecting test prep. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. It always does take longer than you think. Sometimes when people come to us and sort of say, oh, I've taken my test and I just didn't perform how I wanted. People forget that if you've been out of school for 4 or 5 years, some of those kind of concepts, which you might have been really familiar with, have just got a little bit dusty. So you need to give yourself time to take those out, sort of bring them to the front of your brain, and also get prepared for the timing requirements of tests like the GRE and the GMAT. It's really going back and getting your brain back into that kind of standardized test function where you can go in and you can perform at your best. But give yourself time, as we said, give yourself time to book some more dates, and if you need to, so that you give yourself the best chance of getting the score that you need. Generic essays. This is something I was talking with somebody about last week, and it's the rise of AI. So one of the things that you need to be really careful of is it might be super easy to take an essay topic and ping it into ChatGPT and come out with something that looks pretty okay. I can pretty much guarantee that those essays are going to sort of be lacking in the type of personalization that is needed for you to submit an effective application. So as it says here, a lack of personalization can sink your application. There are ways that AI can be used sometimes to benefit your application. Sometimes people will put a topic in or a sort of thought in to see what that throws back. But generally speaking, to get an essay that is as detailed and insightful as you need, that really showcases your understanding and knowledge of the school, and that really highlights those transferable skills that you bring to the table and what you want to take away, you are going to need to spend time on your essays and making them generic. So an essay that could be thrown out to any school, it could go to, obviously some of the topics are different, but a lot of schools have a fairly similar career goals essay at some point in their application. And just saying the same thing by rote and repeating again and again is not going to have the detail that schools require. So giving yourself time should give you the opportunity to avoid that. Weak recommendations we touched on a little bit before. Again, don't be tempted just to go for the boss and have something, again, generic that he or she pings out and that they just do for everybody. If you take time to brief your recommenders, take them out for a coffee, sit them down for a chat, explain to them your motivations. Why are you doing the MBA? What are you looking to get out of it? What are the goals that you want to achieve when you graduate? So making sure that they understand why you've chosen the schools that you have and why you are doing an MBA is really, really important. So by prepping someone, and again, taking time to do that, you can make sure that the recommendations that they submit are as strong as they need to be, and also that what they're saying is aligned with what you are going to say. I guess my caveat on that is be careful who you ask. If you are thinking about your recommendations sort of 6 months or more out, and if you are unsure how your MBA application might be taken at work, just be careful who you choose and how you approach them and when, because that can be important. Underestimating interview prep, winging it rarely works. That's a bit of a tongue twister. I cannot overemphasize the amount of interview prep that people need to do, but you need to get to a point where you are super prepared, but you are so prepared that you can appear completely natural and that you're just pulling it out of the box on the day. And there's actually a real art to that. We work with our clients. We take them through different types of structure and format. What about if you get a competency question, approach it with the STAR format, so situation, task, action, result, or maybe context, action, and impact. So taking time to understand the type of interview that your school does, so whether it's a blind interview, whether they've read all the application, and understanding the types of questions that you might get answered, and having the time to prep really carefully and run through with your coach, sometimes with a friend or a partner, is really, really valuable in ensuring that if you get to that point in the application, which we very much hope you do, that you can put your best foot forward there, and that you present again as somebody that is thoughtful, that is structured, that is engaged, that is enthusiastic, and that has those kind of sort of traits of intellectual curiosity and engagement that schools are looking to see. And as it says at the bottom, if you fully embrace the application process, it can be a really exciting and interesting journey. And I certainly speak for myself, I think probably for Michelle, we love working with our clients. It's something that we really enjoy and feel quite privileged to do, to help support people through their journey to business school. So if you give yourself time, take some time to introspect, you will end up ready to hit the ground running when you get to your school of choice. Right, let's ping on. Right, so about Fortuna. So we are a dream team. I know my colleague Matt Simmons loved to use this, of former admissions directors. We've worked across many of the top business schools. So you'll see a list there. Basically, as I say, we love our jobs. We were gatekeepers at most of the top business schools globally. And now we have come to the other side to help people like you get admission to your schools of choice. We give guidance, we give unbiased feedback, and credible application advice. As I mentioned before, you have the opportunity to sign up for a free consultation with us, with one of our team, info@fortunaadmissions.com. So please do reach out. It's a perfect time of year to do that. Some of our coaches are starting to get their client lists fill up, but we would really love to hear with you. We'd love to have a conversation with you about your goals for this year or for next year. A lot of people come to us early, and we also have applications for work with people for 2+2 or deferred programs, and also for MIMS and MSc. So whatever it is that you're interested in your business school journey, feel free to reach out, and we would love to have a chat with you. Right, so I think we are going to move on to some questions. Is that right, Michelle? Let me see if we've got another Q&A. Okay, so
our first question is, which I super appreciate, you're new to the process, but thank you for joining us, because this is the right place to be. And she's wondering what's the % of applications that include a video question in addition to the essays, Emma? So I did see this question when you were speaking, and I don't know the percentage, but they all don't have it, but quite a majority of them do have it now and are adding it. And what I would say is go ahead and look right now at the schools that all the application materials that are required are listed. So just to give you an example, Kellogg has the video submission questions. MIT Sloan has a video component, but it's pre-recorded. So they're all a little different in that sense, but something like Wharton still does not have a video component that is required with the application. But so I would say, and I know some of the European business schools actually do use it more often, I think, than maybe the US schools. Emma, would that be true?
Yeah, that's correct. So London Business School does, Oxford does. INSEAD's actually, interestingly, changed theirs last year. So they've also shaken up their entire application for the January intake that's coming up. But for the Kira, they introduced a written component. Oxford removed theirs. All the schools have different timings as well. So if the Kira platform throws a question at you, sometimes you'll have 20 seconds to think about it. Some schools will give you 45, some schools response time is a minute, some is a minute and a half. London Business School has an usually they have a preset question. So they will send that question out to you in advance. And on the platform on the day, you have to deliver a very polished answer to that response. And then there's also a random question as well. You can't prepare for them in advance massively in terms of knowing what question you're going to get. The ideas bank that these schools have is enormous, but you can prep in terms of the types of answers and thinking about the buckets of questions that you might get asked. It might be around leadership, it might be around team skills, it might be around taking decisions. So that's how we work with our clients to kind of prepare them so that they're ready for whatever Kira is going to throw at them. But yeah, it's a great innovation for the business school world, I think, and really, really useful for MBA applications.
Yeah, it is. And I'm gonna skip one question because Helen put up a follow-up, which is, are the Kira video interviews assessed by a person? And the answer is yes. So what happens is this now becomes another component to your application that you've submitted, right? So this is kind of the live action assessing your communication skills. Again, how you speak off the cuff with the random questions that are given to you, and also the ones that maybe if they were given to you beforehand. So they are assessed. Again, it's just another component. So but that's why don't overthink it, but there is definitely a preparation that can happen in order to understand. And like we said, since every school kind of, as Emma just went through all the different schools and how they handle it or how they, are asking you to answer questions, every school, I will say, also gives you very detailed instructions. So I think you can prepare definitely, and seeing questions that were asked a previous year. Kellogg sometimes will have 3 questions, 2 and 1 is random, but every year it kind of changes. So I think it's just something that, again, which is why giving yourself the time, most of them, Emma, would you agree, kind of come after a point of you've submitted, now you have this much time to go complete this part of the application. But also, going backwards, some require it before you push submit. So that's why you just have to understand how it is incorporated in the application, and if something that is due by the deadline, which is right, or it's something that is actually, which I believe Kellogg, if I'm using them as an example, you push submit, you have I think it's actually more than 48 hours now to then go do the video component. So that's why, again, Natasha and Helen, I appreciate your questions, but it's something that is really clear. I will say it's nothing that's hidden, that they will just tell you in their instructions for all the application requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's in Europe, it's INSEAD and Oxford that you have to do at the point of submission, and they will ping you an email once you've submitted, and then you'll be told how long you have to submit that Kira interview. London Business School gives you 10 days to 2 weeks to do theirs. So they are all really different. And then the US, as Michelle has said, is different again. But we work across all schools. So we're pretty good at checking out and seeing what people need to do for that. I can see the questions now, Michelle.
Okay, great.
So there's one here from Helen who says, what is the guidance that we should give to the recommenders? Do you have a template? Please, can you also comment on the common LOR? So that's a really good question. There's a couple of questions there, so we'll break that down. In terms of guidance to recommenders, one of the things that we do when we work with you quite early in the application process is prepare a recommender brief. So it's a very big document. We can adjust it to the schools that you're applying to. So if we're working with US clients and it's a common LOR, we'll talk about that in a minute. We have the questions and the different word counts. So the common LOR may be common, but all the word counts are different for different schools. And then across Europe, over here, nobody has managed to get their act together enough to have a common LOR. So all the schools ask different questions. So we have a briefing document that we can provide you with, which has the questions for different schools. But really, it's more about going through and talking to you. What are your strengths? What are the key skills that you want to highlight to the admissions committee? And then having you have that conversation with your recommender and providing them with a briefing document. And in doing that, what it does is takes the hard work out of the recommendation process for the recommender. We do not recommend that you write the recommendations yourself because we want the tone of voice to be different from the essays and from the rest of your application. So we really strongly recommend that you try and get your recommenders to do that for you. But by giving them a briefing document, it means that they are generally more likely to come on board, and they're also grateful that you've taken some of the hard work out by saying, okay, maybe Helen has demonstrated really strong leadership skills, and you give your recommender, once we've talked it through, a good example of when you've demonstrated that in the workplace so that they can comment on that. And that just means that the process is easier around. You can get ahead of the game. Again, if you've taken time and you're doing it sort of 6 months out, 4 months out, there's time for them to write the recommendation and make sure that they're ready to submit ahead of time. The common LOR, which is more used in the US, we work with a lot. Michelle, I don't know about you, but when I do these, I find all the different word counts, making candidates aware that Stanford, Columbia has 500 words for each, and then Harvard has 300 and then 200, and it's crazy, right?
It is crazy. All the schools did get on board, like you said, many years ago now, and came up with these. Basically, the first question is about your performance, and the second one is a piece of constructive feedback. And then, unfortunately, everyone started veering from those two, and the word counts changed, and then Wharton went and got their own 2 questions, which are very similar. So it is hard, but as we help guide our clients to help guide their recommenders, what I tell my clients is, if you can give any words of advice to your recommenders, it's write one long answer, and then they can always tighten it up given the different word counts if the questions are the same. But really the key is, going back to Emma's point, is working with your recommenders on what have been your key attributes, and also trying to be complimentary, not only of your application, but of each other. So you don't want your recommenders maybe saying exactly or highlighting the exact same attributes, right? So, there could be overlap with leadership and, teamwork, but also maybe on this certain project with this, recommender, you showed these attributes, and you can speak to them. And what it really gets down to, like Emma mentioned, is those stories and anecdotes that demonstrate that. And that's what makes the letter of recommendation really shine and stand out, because most of them are going to be positive, but it's the specific stories that your recommenders can speak to highlight how you've done something, how you've interacted, how you demonstrated your leadership, outside of your responsibilities. And how you can do that is then that's how, when you, use our document, speak with them, is reminding them of those times that you've done that. And that's what's really helpful and makes their job easier. And I say that bullet points, let me remind you, maybe in your performance review, you just remind them, you go back and read your performance review and take the highlights that they spoke about. So again, you're making it very easy on them, but also to say, I'd love for you to speak about how I think outside the box, how my quantitative abilities have really come into play on this project. And I think that's how you really can guide them. And I think the common letters or common questions with the letters of recommendation do come into play more with the US business schools. There's a little bit of maybe some schools have additional questions. But again, I think at the end of the day, if you understand what those look like, way ahead of the game, and then you sit down with your recommenders and you're help walking them through it months in advance, then they have the time to put those answers together really thoughtfully. Yeah, I think that's a great way to end. I don't think we missed any questions.
I don't think so.
But again, I really thank everyone for being here, because I think this is going to be so valuable to you at the end. Sometimes, I'm sure Emma and we start with some clients quite early. And I love when we get to the point of either submission or then once interview prep, and it's like, wow, can you remember back when you spoke? Right? Like it's a big investment. Like, again, it's an investment looking to go to business school, but the time and the money, but the thoughtfulness that you all are putting into it right now is, I think, is a gift to yourself as well, as we said previously, Emma did. But I think it's going to help you stay organized, hopefully, and to really hit those key milestones. And honestly, at the end of the day, just, position you for success. And we wish you all the best in this process. And again, going back to, we love to speak with anyone for a free consultation. And it's been a great time speaking with everyone. Emma, do you have any final words?
No, just it's as I said earlier on, it's a great time of year. I love this point in year. I'm excited about the admission season ahead. So please do reach out. We would be, really excited to have a conversation with you. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.